In a small African village called Soro, there lived a young boy named Bogo. From the day he was born, people noticed Bogo was different. His skin was pale, his hair almost white, and his eyes a light color that was unusual in the village. Bogo was born with albinism, a condition that made him look different from everyone else. But in Soro, people didn't understand albinism. Some thought it was a curse, others believed Bogo was a sign of bad luck. Even his own father rejected him, refusing to hold him or call him his son. Bogo grew up feeling like he didn't belong, and the villagers often looked at him with fear or pity. Children would point and whisper, while adults would tell their kids to stay away from him. Despite all this, Bogo had a kind heart. He wanted to know more about why he was different. He would often sneak into the village's small library, which barely had a few shelves of books. Bogo loved to read, it was his escape from the harsh reality he faced every day. Through reading, he learned about the world beyond Soro and found comfort in stories of people who overcame challenges.
Bogo also had one true friend in the village, a boy named Toba. Toba was the only person who treated Bogo like everyone else. He didn't care about Bogo's skin color or what others thought. To him, Bogo was just his friend. The two boys would spend hours together, laughing, playing, and talking about everything. One day, Bogo explained to Toba what he had learned about his condition. He told Toba that albinism was caused by a lack of melanin, the pigment that gives color to skin, hair, and eyes. Bogo explained, "It's not a curse or bad luck. It's just something I was born with." Toba listened carefully and nodded, determined to defend Bogo if anyone tried to say otherwise. Growing up in Soro was tough for Bogo, especially when he had to face bullies who didn't understand or accept him. One afternoon, while he was on his way to meet Toba near the river, a group of older boys spotted him. They smirked and started whispering to each other. Soon, they blocked Bogo's path, forming a circle around him. "Hey, ghost boy," one of them sneered, "what are you doing here? Don't you know you're not wanted?" Another boy snickered and poked at Bogo's arm. "Yeah, go back to wherever you came from, before you curse us all." They began taunting him, calling him names and shoving him around. Bogo tried to stay calm, but their words stung. He felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment and anger, but he didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing him cry. He knew better than to fight back, he had been through this before. Just as he was feeling cornered, a familiar voice broke through the noise. "Leave him alone," Toba shouted, pushing through the group of boys. He planted himself in front of Bogo, arms crossed defiantly. "What has he ever done to you?" The bullies looked taken aback, but one of them scoffed, "Why do you care, Toba? He's not like us." "That's right," Toba replied firmly. "He is a kind person and smarter than any of you. You could learn a lot from him." Toba's words were filled with courage, and his fierce loyalty silenced the bullies. They muttered among themselves and eventually slinked away, leaving Bogo and Toba standing alone. Bogo let out a shaky breath, grateful to have Toba by his side. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. Toba patted him on the back and grinned. "Anytime, Bogo. Don't listen to them, they're just scared of what they don't understand." From that day, Bogo knew he wasn't alone. No matter what he faced, he had a true friend who would stand by him.
Bogo's love for reading led him to stumble upon all sorts of information. One day, he found a piece of paper with instructions on how to do cardiopulmonary resuscitation (CPR). He didn't fully understand it, but he read through it anyway, fascinated by the idea of helping someone breathe if they stopped. As fate would have it, that knowledge would come in handy in a way Bogo never expected. The village of Soro was ruled by a king named Yarak. King Yarak was feared by all. He was harsh and cruel, often punishing villagers for small mistakes and demanding high taxes. People whispered about his bad temper and unfair treatment, but no one dared to speak against him. The villagers simply endured his rule, hoping things would change someday. One hot afternoon, the villagers gathered in the market square for a festival. King Yarak was there, watching the people with his usual stern expression. Suddenly, he clutched his chest and collapsed to the ground. People gasped and stepped back, unsure of what to do. No one dared approach the king, fearing the consequences if he recovered, and was angered by their interference. But Bogo didn't hesitate. He remembered what he had read about CPR and rushed to the king's side. Without thinking of the risks, he followed the steps he had learned from the paper. He placed his hands on the king's chest and began pressing down, trying to restart his heart. People watched in shock, some murmuring that Bogo was trying to curse the king. But Toba shouted, "He's helping him. Let Bogo work."
After a few tense moments, the king coughed and started breathing again. Bogo stepped back, his heart pounding. He had saved the king's life, and everyone knew it. King Yarak, too, understood what had happened. He looked at Bogo with a mix of surprise and gratitude. For the first time in his life, Bogo felt the warmth of the villagers' eyes on him. Instead of fear or scorn, they looked at him with admiration. Bogo had saved their king, even though he'd been treated so poorly all his life. After he recovered, King Yarak called a grand gathering in the village square. He stood before the people and spoke, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. "I was wrong to be harsh to all of you," he began. "And today, I have been given a second chance, by God who used this young boy, who everyone once feared." The king paused, looking at Bogo with respect. King Yarak then asked Bogo to explain two things to the people: how to do cardiopulmonary resuscitation (CPR) and what albinism is. Bogo felt nervous but also proud. He spoke about albinism, just as he had explained it to Toba. Bogo taught and demonstrated CPR to the people and asked volunteers to practice with dolls so they can master the technique. He told the villagers, "Albinism is just a lack of color in my skin and hair. It doesn't make me different inside. I am just like all of you." The villagers listened closely, realizing they had misunderstood Bogo all along. The king, seeing the impact of Bogo's words, declared that from that day forward, no one in Soro would be judged for their appearance or for any disability. Everybody should be treated with equality and with fairness, the king said. He promised to rule with kindness and fairness, inspired by the courage Bogo had shown. The villagers cheered, not only for their king's promise but for Bogo, the boy they once shunned but now celebrated as a hero.
As the celebrations continued, Bogo felt a warmth he had never known. Toba hugged him, grinning from ear to ear, saying, "I always knew you were special." From that day on, Bogo walked through the village with his head held high. People greeted him with smiles and respect, and the children who had once feared him now looked up to him with admiration. The village of Soro was changed, no longer a place of fear and misunderstanding but a community united in respect and kindness. And thanks to Bogo's courage and the kindness he had shown, children born with albinism or disabled children in Soro would never face the struggles he had endured. Bogo had not only saved the king's life but had also changed the hearts of an entire village.